Water is the only element that actively tries to kill you every second you are in it. On land, you can stand still and survive. In the water, cessation of movement means death. It creates a relentless physiological tax on the human body. It steals heat 25 times faster than air. It compresses the chest cavity. It alters gravity. And most importantly, it denies the most fundamental human need, oxygen. In the United States military elite selection courses, water is not treated as a terrain feature. It is treated as a weapon. It is the great equalizer. A candidate can be the strongest runner or the fastest rucker on land, but place them in deep water with their hands tied behind their back and physical strength becomes irrelevant. Panic is the enemy. Biology is the barrier. This documentary analyzes the aquatic conditioning pipelines of the Navy SEALs, Air Force Pararescue, and Marine Corps rescue swimmers. We will deconstruct the science of drownproofing, the terror of underwater pool competency, and the psychology of operating in a hypoxic environment. The training begins with a fundamental understanding of mammalian physiology. When a human face is submerged in cold water, the mammalian dive reflex is triggered. Bradycardia sets in, the heart rate slows down to conserve oxygen. Peripheral vasoconstriction shunts blood away from the limbs to the vital organs, the heart and brain. This is a survival mechanism, but for a soldier who needs to swim, fight, or rescue, it is a hindrance. The blood leaving the muscles leads to fatigue. The cold leads to loss of fine motor skills. The training is designed to override these instincts, to teach the operator to function when every alarm bell in their brain is screaming that they are dying. The most famous and perhaps most misunderstood evolution in aquatic training is Navy SEAL drownproofing. It takes place in the combat training tank during the first phase of basic underwater demolition SEAL training. The students stand on the pool deck. Instructors tie their hands behind their backs. Then they tie their feet together. They are defenseless. They are ordered to jump into the deep end of the pool. To the uninitiated, this looks like a torture technique or a drowning simulation. It is neither. It is a physics lesson. The objective is to teach the student that they do not need their limbs to survive in the water. They need their lungs. The technique relies on buoyancy control. The student allows themselves to sink to the bottom of the pool. They must relax. Tension burns oxygen. Relaxation conserves it. As they touch the bottom, they gently push off, exhaling a small amount of air. As they rise to the surface, they inhale a quick breath and immediately sink back down. This is called the bob. They must do this for minutes on end. Then they must travel the length of the pool, propelling themselves with a dolphin kick still bound. They must perform a front flip and a back flip underwater. Finally, they must retrieve a face mask from the bottom of the pool using their teeth. The failure rate in drownproofing is not caused by an inability to swim. It is caused by claustrophobia and panic. When the hands are bound, the brain feels trapped. The instinct is to thrash to fight the water. Fighting the water leads to exhaustion, and exhaustion leads to sinking. The SEAL candidates who pass are those who surrender to the physics of the environment. They learn that the water will support them if they stop fighting it. This is the first psychological gate. If you cannot control your mind in a warm pool, you will certainly die in the freezing surf of the Pacific Ocean. While the Navy SEALs focus on stealth and endurance, the Air Force Pararescue Jumpers, or PJs, focus on stress management under direct attack. Their water training is widely considered the most intense in the entire Department of Defense. PJs are rescue specialists. Their job is to jump into the ocean to save down pilots or sailors. Therefore, their training simulates a panic-stricken victim trying to drown the rescuer. This is validated through an evolution known as pool competency, or simply pool comp. The students are in the pool with a snorkel and mask. They are treading water. The instructors, known as the sharks, enter the water. They do not observe from the deck, they attack. An instructor will dive down, grab the student by the ankles, and drag them to the bottom. They will rip the mask off. They will tie knots in the snorkel. They will spin the student around to induce vertigo. The student's objective is not to fight the instructor. It is to solve the problem. While being thrashed underwater, running out of air, the student must calmly untangle the snorkel, clear their mask and surface. But the test does not end there. As soon as they take a breath, they are attacked again. This creates a hypoxic loop. The oxygen levels in the blood drop. Carbon dioxide levels rise. The diaphragm begins to spasm, signaling the urge to breathe. This is the breaking point. The scientific principle at work here is the CO2 tolerance threshold. The sensation of needing to breathe is not triggered by a lack of oxygen, but by a buildup of carbon dioxide. Untrained civilians panic when CO2 levels rise slightly. Elite operators are conditioned to function with massive CO2 loads. They learn that the urge to breathe is just a signal, not a command. They can ignore it. They can continue to tie knots, manipulate gear, and follow procedures while their lungs are burning. This is critical because in a real rescue, a drowning pilot will climb on top of the PJ in a panic. If the PJ panics in return, 2 people die. The PJ must be comfortable being held underwater until the victim calms down or is subdued. The United States Marine Corps approaches water survival from a utilitarian perspective. For the Marine, water is an obstacle to be crossed to get to the fight. Their qualification is known as Marine Corps Water Survival Advanced. The gear is the variable. A Marine does not swim in a swimsuit. They swim in camis, boots, a flak jacket, and a Kevlar helmet. They carry a rubber rifle. The challenge is drag and weight. A wet uniform weighs heavy. Boots act as anchors. The Marine must learn to shed gear while treading water. In the deep end, they have 10 seconds to remove their vest, drop the rifle, and unlace their boots. If they take 11 seconds, they sink. They also learn the technique of inflating the blouse. By buttoning the collar tight and blowing air into the shirt, the wet uniform traps a bubble of air across the shoulders, turning the clothing into a makeshift life vest. This is a survival skill born from the history of amphibious assaults, from Tarawa to Incheon. Marines are taught that if the landing craft sinks, they must become their own flotation device. Beyond the pool, the ocean introduces variables that cannot be replicated indoors: salt, currents, waves, and temperature. Navy SEAL training includes the notorious surf passage. The boats, manned by 6 to 7 students, must paddle through the breaking waves of the Pacific. If the boat hits a wave at the wrong angle, it capsizes or dumps. The collision of fiberglass and bone in the churning white water is violent. But the most grueling ocean event is the rock portage. Candidates must swim through the surf zone, navigate around jagged rocks, and climb onto a jetty while waves are crashing over them. The timing is everything. If a candidate tries to climb when the wave is receding, they are smashed against the barnacles. They must wait for the surge of the water to lift them up. This requires reading the ocean. It requires synchronization with nature. The ocean is undefeated. You do not beat the ocean, you navigate it. Hypothermia is the silent instructor in all these evolutions. The water off the coast of Coronado, California, hovers around 60 degrees Fahrenheit. It is not freezing, but it is cold enough to induce stage 1 hypothermia within minutes. Shivering begins, then the shivering stops, a dangerous sign. Mental confusion sets in. Speech becomes slurred. Candidates are monitored constantly by medical staff. They are pulled from the water, rewarmed, and sent back in. This cycle hardens the mind. The soldier learns that being cold is just a sensation. It is uncomfortable, but it is not fatal provided they keep moving. This effectively expands their comfort zone. What would send a civilian into shock becomes a manageable Tuesday morning for an operator. Another critical aspect of aquatic warfare is helocasting. This is the insertion of troops from a helicopter directly into the water. The aircraft flies low, 10 feet above the waves at 10 knots. The soldiers jump, the impact is jarring. Water forces its way into the nose and sinuses. The rotor wash from the helicopter creates a blinding spray, reducing visibility to zero. The soldier must immediately orient themselves, check their gear, and group up. In night operations, this is done in total darkness. The soldier hits the black water sinks and must trust their life vest to bring them back to the surface. It is a leap of faith into a hostile void. For the Coast Guard rescue swimmers, the aviation survival technicians, the standards are even more specific. They operate in conditions that ground other military branches. When a hurricane hits and a fishing vessel is sinking, the Coast Guard launches. Their training school in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, has an attrition rate that rivals the SEALs. Their primary testing ground is a wave pool simulator that generates massive, chaotic waves, combined with high-powered fans that simulate hurricane-force winds and rain. In this simulator, they perform the multi-man rescue. They must tow 2 survivors simultaneously while fighting the artificial current. The physical tax on the legs is immense. The flutter kick must be continuous and powerful. If the legs fail, the swimmer and the survivors drift away. They train until their leg muscles seize, and then they train more. They are unique in the military because they carry no weapons. Their weapon is their swimming ability. Their enemy is the storm. The psychological component of water training cannot be overstated. There is a concept known as the switch. In a drowning situation, the primitive brain wants to flip the switch to panic mode. It wants to thrash, scream, and climb. The training is designed to weld that switch in the off position. It teaches the operator to dissociate from the fear. When a student is underwater performing a knot-tying task while holding their breath for 2 minutes, they enter a state of extreme focus. The world narrows down to the knot. The burning in the lungs is acknowledged but categorized as background noise. This creates a mental compartmentalization that pays dividends on the battlefield. If a soldier can keep a steady hand while suffocating underwater, they can keep a steady hand while under fire on land. The stress pathways are the same. The water just exposes them faster. Breath hold training is a science in itself. It is not just about big lungs, it is about efficiency. Operators learn to diaphragmatic breathe, filling the lower lobes of the lungs where gas exchange is most efficient. They learn to purge CO2 before a dive. They learn to move slowly. Fast movement burns oxygen exponentially. A slow, methodical swimmer will outlast a frantic, fast swimmer every time. This efficiency translates to tactical movement. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. There is also the element of team survival. In the drownproofing evolution, students often have to float in a line hooked together. If one student sinks, they drag the others down. This forces the group to self-regulate. Stronger swimmers will nudge the weaker ones to the surface. They learn to communicate without words. A squeeze of the arm means I'm okay. A kick means move. In the silence of the deep, a brotherhood is formed that is deeper than words. They literally hold each other's lives in their hands. The final test of aquatic competence is often a long-distance ocean swim. For SEAL candidates, it is a 2-mile swim in the open ocean. For recon Marines, it involves swimming with a rucksack. These events take hours. The salt water chafes the neck until it bleeds. The sun burns the skin. The isolation is total. It is just the swimmer and the rhythm of the stroke. Left, right, breathe. Left, right, breathe. It becomes a meditation on pain. The ocean is vast and indifferent. It teaches humility. It reminds the soldier that they are small, and that survival is a privilege, not a right. In modern warfare, the scope of aquatic operations is expanding. With the pivot to the Pacific theater, the focus on amphibious operations is returning. The ability to infiltrate from the sea, traverse the surf zone, and transition to land combat is a strategic necessity. This requires soldiers who are amphibious by nature. They must be comfortable in the transition zone, that chaotic line where the ocean meets the earth. The equipment has evolved, but the human factor remains the limiting variable. Closed-circuit rebreathers like the Mk-25 Drager allow operators to swim underwater without releasing bubbles, maintaining total stealth. But these systems add complexity. A rebreather is a chemical plant on the swimmer's back. If the mix of oxygen and nitrogen is wrong, the swimmer can suffer from oxygen toxicity, leading to convulsions and drowning. Thus, the training must also cover the physics of gases. Boyle's law, Dalton's law, Henry's law, the operator must be a scientist as well as an athlete. Ultimately, water training is about honesty. The water does not care about your rank. It does not care about your father's money. It does not care about your excuses. If you stop swimming, you sink. It provides immediate, undeniable feedback. There is no way to fake it. This makes it the perfect selection tool. It strips away the facade and reveals the core character of the candidate. Those who graduate from these programs walk differently. They have faced the suffocation, the cold, and the panic, and they have mastered them. They carry a quiet confidence that comes from knowing they can survive in an environment that is hostile to human life. They have been baptized by the surf and hardened by the deep. When you see a Navy SEAL, a pararescue jumper, or a Coast Guard swimmer, you are looking at someone who has made peace with the water. They know that the water is waiting for them. And next time they enter it, they will not fight it. They will become part of it. They will use the darkness and the depth as cover. They will turn the weapon of nature against their enemies. This is the reality of military aquatic training. It is a process of turning the human body into an amphibious vehicle. It is grueling, it is dangerous, and it is absolutely necessary. Because the next war may not start on the ground. It may start in the surf, in the dark, under the waves. And the only thing standing between the mission and failure will be how long one operator can hold their breath. If this deep dive into aquatic warfare training gave you a new perspective on human endurance, make sure to subscribe. We have more breakdowns coming on high-altitude warfare, desert survival, and the psychology of interrogation resistance. The training never ends, neither does our coverage of it.